Hi everybody. Today we're going to be looking at types of quadrilaterals. Okay, so quite important in exams. Say quite important. It can be very important, can't it? You might get a few questions based on this. But the idea today is that we're really comfortable with looking at a quadrilateral and knowing how to name it. Okay, and there are a few tricks to this, but as long as you're really focused, I think you'll find it pretty straightforward. Okay, so very first thing we need to discuss is what is a quadrilateral, because it sounds like a tricky word, doesn't it? But actually, all it means is a four-sided shape. But we do want to become familiar with the term quadrilateral because in an exam, it's more likely to use the word quadrilateral than it is four-sided shape, okay? So quadrilateral just means four-sided shape. Okay. Now, before we go any further, in order to be able to identify any quadrilateral, we need to know two very important things: parallel sides and right angles. So let's start by talking about parallel sides. So parallel sides are two sides of a shape that always stay the same distance apart and never meet. Okay, so let's take a look at the rectangle below. I'm just going to demonstrate what's meant by parallel sides. If you look at the top side, so I'm going to draw a line here, and the bottom side right here, I'm going to try and make sure it's very straight. Okay, if you look at those two sides, it doesn't matter for how long we stretch those sides out. In other words, I could continue to draw this line here forever and ever and ever, and this line here forever and ever and ever, and guess what? They're never going to meet. The distance between them is never going to change, okay? It's always going to maintain the same distance between those two sides. That's what we mean by parallel, okay? And you'll notice as well that on the other sides, so let's call them the left and right side for now, this side here and this side here, they are also parallel, okay? But we do want to try to not draw lines. We want to sort of look at it and mentally visualize it rather than draw those lines that I've just drawn. So let me get rid of them, take another look at that shape, and you should see that the top and bottom side are parallel and the left and the right side are parallel. So we'd say that this shape, this rectangle, has two sets of parallel sides, or two pairs of parallel sides, okay? So that's parallel sides. Now let's talk about the other thing, right angles. Right angle is a perfect corner, just like the corner of a square, a perfect L shape. So take a look at these corners here. Can you see that we have a perfect L shape right here? It's not going to be perfectly drawn, I'm afraid. Yeah, but you can see, let me get rid of it now. We've got that perfect L shape in the corner, haven't we? Now we also have a perfect L shape right here. It might be upside down, but it's still a perfect corner, isn't it? So we have another right angle. And here, we've got another right angle. And here, we have another right angle. So we would describe this shape as having four right angles. So now that we know what parallel sides are, and we know what right angles are, this is all we need to know to be able to identify any quadrilateral, any four-sided shape, okay? So what we're going to do is take a look at some different four-sided shapes, some different quadrilaterals, and decide what they are based on their properties, okay? Based on what makes them up, based on how they've been created. Okay, so on the screen, on the left-hand side, we've got a list of the quadrilaterals that we're going to be talking about today. We've got rectangle, square, parallelogram, rhombus, trapezium, and irregular quadrilaterals. And next to them, we have their properties. What do I mean by properties? Who's first on the list? Theo, what do I mean by properties? Do you know?
Is it like uh I forgot.
No problem, Theo. Don't worry at all. Let me ask a couple of other people and then we'll and then I will confirm. Scarlett, what do you think properties might mean?
Properties are like a specific thing that a shape has.
Awesome, yeah. So properties are like the characteristics, how we describe the shape. So, for example, we've got rectangle is a quadrilateral with four right angles. So a rectangle is a four-sided shape with four right angles. Now, something that I kind of don't want you to sort of get confused by, something that I'll mention right now, is all of these are quadrilaterals. So if I took this part away from the definition, the only thing it has is four right angles. In other words, if you've got a four-sided shape and it has four right angles, it's a rectangle, okay? All of these are quadrilaterals, so it's not really adding to the definition, okay? And that makes it more simple, doesn't it? It means there isn't much to them. So, let's go through them one at a time. So, a rectangle is a quadrilateral with four right angles. By the way, don't put too much pressure on yourself to remember all these immediately. We're going to do a bit of practice, okay? A square is a quadrilateral with four right angles and four sides of equal length. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. A rhombus is a quadrilateral which has four sides of equal length. A trapezium is a quadrilateral which has exactly one pair of parallel sides. And irregular quadrilaterals is a quadrilateral which doesn't follow the special rules. In other words, it's none of the ones above. It doesn't have any special rules. Don't worry, we'll talk about them, okay? So at the moment, all we've done is discuss the properties of different quadrilaterals, different four-sided shapes, but now we need to identify them, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to put a shape on the screen, then we'll do the first one together. Then what I want you to do is let me know in the chat box what type of quadrilateral do you think it is. And here is a clue, or not a clue, but here is something to be mindful of, that a shape might have more than one classification. In other words, we might see a shape that we could call two of these words. Okay, so let's do the first one together. I might ask for a bit of help. Let's see what our first shape is. We've got this shape. Okay, so in order to identify the shape, in order to classify the shape, what I need to do, please don't draw on the screen. 2 seconds, let me turn the screen sharing thing off, or the screen drawing thing off. 2 seconds, guys. Okay. In order to identify what that shape is, that pinky purpley shape is that's just appeared on the screen, I need to think about its properties, okay? So I'm going to ask you one at a time to tell me if it is or isn't the shape on the left, okay? So let me start with Himank. All right, Himank, is this shape a rectangle?
No,
How do you know?
because it's not long. It's not long, and it's not long like a rectangle. It's like a square, and it's also a trapezium.
How done? So don't worry about what it, that's great. It's great if you know what it is. It's perfect. But the question is, why is it not a rectangle? So rectangles don't have to be long. Take a look at the definition of a rectangle. Let me point to it. If you look at what a rectangle is, look at its description. How do we know that that shape isn't a rectangle?
It does not have four right angles.
Perfect. Exactly. Perfect. Well done, Himak. It doesn't have four right angles, okay? Because a rectangle is a four-sided shape with four right angles. Does this have four right angles? Let's take a look. That's not a right angle. 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 It has zero right angles. It needs four to be a rectangle, so it cannot be a rectangle, which means we need to move on to square. So let's go to the next person with their hands up. Annabelle, is this shape a square and why?
It's not a square because, as you can see for the definition, it says a quadrilateral with four right angles and four sides of equal length. And if we look at the shape, you can see there are two sides that there are two sides that are the same, left and right, and two sides at the top and bottom, and they're not all equal, and it doesn't have four right angles, so it can't be a square.
Perfect, Annabelle. Yeah. So let's take it one step at a time. So does it have four right angles? No. So already it can't be a square. Let me just put a cross here. It can't be a square, can it? Because it doesn't have four right angles. But let's look at the other thing anyway. And like Annabelle said, it doesn't have four sides of equal length. For example, the top is much shorter than the bottom. So we know all sides are not equal in length. So we've ruled out rectangle and square. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, I know what it is. I don't need to go through all of these things. And that's great, but it's important that we also know how to reason. In other words, let's not just say what a shape is, but let's say why it isn't a shape, okay? So let's move on to the next person. Okay, Jacob W. Is this shape a parallelogram?
Um, it's not a parallelogram because on the definition it says a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. So let's check. It has one pair of parallel sides on the top and bottom, but on the left and right, can you draw a line that like continues? You'll see that they eventually meet.
Yeah, very good. Well explained. This cannot be a parallelogram, as Jacob said, and he was right to emphasize the word two. It needs two pairs of parallel sides. It does have one, because if we look at the top and we look at the bottom, like Jacob said, they are parallel. Okay? They will never meet. If I keep stretching those lines across the whole screen, they're never going to meet. But it needs two, not just one pair. And this left side and this right side are not parallel, because look what happens. They're eventually going to crash into each other, aren't they? The distance between them isn't going to maintain the same distance, okay? It's getting more narrow as it goes upwards. If it goes downwards, it will become wider. So they're not parallel. Therefore, it cannot be a parallelogram. Let's move on to rhombus. Okay, who's next? Let's go to George S. Is this shape a rhombus?
Hi. No, it's not a rhombus. All of them are different. Actually, it's not. It's not a rhombus, but there are two sides that are equal length.
Why is it not a rhombus?
Because a rhombus, it has to have all of its sides equal.
Perfect. It cannot be a rhombus because by definition, as George said, a rhombus is a quadrilateral with four sides of equal length. And we can clearly see that the top and the bottom are definitely not the same size. So immediately we can say that this is not a rhombus. Perfect. All right. Let's go to Ira. Ira, is this shape a trapezium? If so, if yes, why? If not, why?
I think it is a trapezium because it is a quadrilateral. They all are, so that doesn't really count. It has exactly one pair of parallel lines, and it's not an irregular quadrilateral because it follows the properties of the trapezium.
Wow. Yeah, what good language, brilliant language, fantastic. Absolutely, it has one pair of parallel sides. We already worked that out. So what Ira said is we know it has one pair of parallel sides. We know it has exactly one pair, not at least one pair. That's important. It has exactly one pair of parallel sides. So it must be a trapezium. And she also added it can't be an irregular quadrilateral because it already fulfills the criteria of another shape. It's already a trapezium. So we found out what this shape is. It's a trapezium. Okay. So the reason that we need to be very comfortable with identifying quadrilaterals is because this trapezium might be drawn a different way, mightn't it? It could be that it's rotated, it could be that it's upside down, it could be that the sides are longer or shorter. So we need to look for the exact properties, which is it has one pair of parallel sides. All right, well done guys. Let's get a new shape. Okay, here's our new shape. So let's start with Gersima. Gersima, is this shape a rectangle? Where did you go? Oh, here you go. All right, Gersima, is this shape a rectangle?
Yeah. No.
So why not?
Because a rectangle is supposed to have 4 right angles. That doesn't have any right angles. And a parallelogram.
Hold on. Sorry, Gersima. I love that you're so eager, but let's just focus on rectangle for now. So can you just confirm, why is it not a rectangle?
Because a rectangle is supposed to have 4 right angles, but that doesn't have any.
Good, that's it. Good. I love how eager you are, guys. But let's deal with one step at a time, just so we're really considering everything and we're being really good at reasoning. Yeah, brilliant, Gersima. Fantastic. Okay, so then we're going to go to who's next. I think I've asked everyone with that. Oh no, Jordan. Jordan, is this shape a square?
No, because it doesn't have 4 right angles. But it does have 4 equal sides.
See, it
No,
does
no, it doesn't have 4 equal sides.
Amazing. Yeah, perfect. So we already knew, as Jordan said, it can't be a square because it doesn't have 4 right angles. So immediately we know it's not a square. But let's check the other thing anyway. And like Jordan said, we can see the sides aren't equal. Top and bottom are much shorter than left and right, aren't they? So we know that it's not a square and we know it's not a rectangle. So let's move on to parallelogram. And that takes us to Happy Harry. Harry, I'm not sure if you're talking. If you are, I can't hear you. But I can see that you're unmuted. Let me try to unmute you once more to see if it works. I can't hear you. Tell you what, Harry, send me a message if you can sort that out, because I'd love to hear from you. All right, let's go to Oscar. Oscar, is this shape a parallelogram and why?
It is a parallelogram because it has 2 pairs of parallel sides.
Perfect. Yeah. Sorry, were you going to say something else?
No.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. It has 2 pairs of parallel sides. We can see that the left and right side are parallel to each other and the top and bottom are parallel to each other. I'm not going to draw the lines on the screen again, guys, because what I'd really like us to do is look at it and visualize it mentally, see it in our heads and try to consider whether it's parallel or not without the aid of anything drawn onto it. So perfect, it is a parallelogram. But at the start, we said that maybe some shapes have more than one classification. So let's just check the others just to make sure. By the way, let's quickly rule out irregular quadrilateral because we know that it already has a classification, at least one. So is it a rhombus? Let's go to, I think we're going back round now. All right, Theo, is it a rhombus?
No, because a rhombus has 4 sides of equal length, but this doesn't.
Perfect. Very good. A rhombus has 4 sides of equal length and this doesn't. Simple as that, guys. Very good. It can't be a rhombus. And finally, Scarlett, is this shape a trapezium?
This shape is definitely not a trapezium, because a trapezium is a quadrilateral that has exactly 1, not 2, not 0, but only 1 pair of parallel sides. But on this, each pair is parallel.
Perfect. Good. And that's why we need to be careful, like Scarlett said there, with the word exactly. Trapezium doesn't have at least one pair of parallel sides. It has exactly one pair of parallel sides, and this has two. So it cannot be a trapezium. Therefore, its classification is a parallelogram. All right, you're doing very well, guys. Let's go and grab a new shape. Okay, Himunk, is this shape a rectangle?
No,
Why not?
because if it was a rectangle, the opposite side would, like, at the top at the top and bottom it would be the same, but the top and the sides are the same, so it can't be a rectangle.
Hold
It
on a
must be
minute.
a
So I
square.
know, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, but take a look at the properties of a rectangle, right? If you go back to your rectangle, take a look at what it says. A
It has
rectangle.
4 right angles, and they all of them, all of the 7.5 centimeters come in each length.
So Himunk, think about it, right? So a rectangle has 4 right angles, and that's it. Does this shape have 4 right angles?
Yes.
So is it a rectangle?
No.
Okay. All right, Himang. Right. So let's do it one more time. A rectangle is a quadrilateral with 4 right angles. Is this shape a quadrilateral?
Yes.
Does it have 4 right angles?
Yes.
So do you think it's a rectangle?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So good, Himang. I actually really like the fact that you argued that. That's fantastic because we're taught from such a young age that this. Well, I'm not going to say what it is because we're going to do that ourselves. But we're taught that it only has one name. But actually, this is a rectangle. Yeah, it's a quadrilateral with 4 right angles, so we can call it a rectangle. Now, Himang says something very important. He says that I don't remember if you mentioned what it actually is, but I think we all know why Himang was arguing passionately, and we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, let's go to Annabelle. Annabelle, is this shape a parallelogram? Sorry, we missed that square. Is the shape a square?
Yes,
Why is it
because
square?
it's a square because it says a quadrilateral with 4 right angles, and the shape has 4 right angles, and it also has 4 sides of equal length.
I'm going to
So-
argue with you, Annabelle. I'm not sure you're correct because we don't have the size of this side and we don't have the size of this side. So how do we know it's got equal length sides?
because as you can see, that it says 7.5 centimeters on 2 of them, and both of them are the same. So that means the other 2 are the same.
Perfect. Yeah, of course we know that all the sides are the same because like Annabelle said, 7.5 centimeters at the top, we can see the bottom is exactly the same size as the top. So we know that it's 7.5 centimeters down here as well. And the same can be said for the right side. The right side is the same size as the left side. Therefore, we know its size is also 7.5 centimeters. So it must be a square because it's got 4 right angles and all of its sides are equal. So it has 2 classifications. Okay. Or does it? Let's go to the next person. Who's next? Jacob. Is this shape a parallelogram?
So the parallelogram, a quadrilateral with 2 pairs of parallel sides. So let's look at the square. Like Annabelle, no, never mind. So we see that if we know it's a square, so it's equal length, and it has like 7.5 everywhere and has right angles, then on the top and bottom there's 1 pair, and on the left and the right it's also parallel, because if he stretched it forever it would never meet. So it is a parallelogram.
Perfect. Yeah, if we look at the definition of a parallelogram, guys, like Jacob said, it has two pairs of parallel sides. I won't draw the line, but you can see that that side and that side, they are parallel. We can see that, can't we? We don't need to do anything. We can see it. They are perfectly parallel. And the top side and the bottom side, that means there are two sets or two pairs of parallel sides. So it's a parallelogram. So this shape, the shape's been a bit greedy. It's taken all of the words. It's taken rectangle, square, parallelogram. Are we done? Or can we call it something else? Let's go to George S. George, is it a rhombus?
It is. It is a rhombus because it says a quadrilateral which has four sides of equal length. Because there it looks like all of the sizes are equal. 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5. So it is a rhombus.
Perfect. It's a rhombus as well, because a rhombus only needs to have four sides of equal length. And like George says, it does have four sides of equal length. So it must be a rhombus. So what's going on here? This shape that we know to be a square is actually, or can actually be classified as a rhombus, a parallelogram, a square, and a rectangle. Now, we're going to check trapezium. Then we're going to go back to what Himank said a minute ago, because he said something really important. But let's first check trapezium. Jordan, is this shape a trapezium?
No, because there's it doesn't have one pair of parallel sides, but has two.
Perfect. Brilliant. Very, very good. Straight to the point. That's exactly what we need to do. This is why it's not trapezium. This is what it has. This is what it's supposed to have. Of course, it's not trapezium. It has two pairs of parallel sides. So let's cross that one out. Okay, and we also know it's not an irregular quadrilateral because it fulfills the criteria of special shapes. Yeah? So we know it's not an irregular quadrilateral. Right, I've got a tricky question, and I've landed on Oscar. So I'm sorry, Oscar, for this tricky question. Now, Himank really argued passionately earlier, and I was so glad that he did. And he was like, it's not a rectangle. And I think he was alluding to the fact that it's a square. It cannot be anything else. So, Oscar, why do you think that we should try to call this a square more so than anything else?
Because a square and a rectangle might have four right angles, but a rectangle has two long lines and then
No, a rectangle doesn't need two longer lines.
because it doesn't have all the sides the exact same size.
It does. It does. It's really difficult what I'm asking here, guys. I'm telling you it's four things, and now I'm asking you why should we only call it one thing? So it's a difficult question to answer, but this is what reasoning is all about, isn't it? Having a chat and thinking about, well, why should we call it a square? Why can't we call it a rhombus? By the way, we absolutely can call it a rhombus, but I suppose my question is, why do we automatically call it a square? Let me go to Ira. Ira, what do you think?
We call it a square because we've been told that that this shape is a square. We haven't been taught about these shapes we haven't been taught about the rhombus a lot. We haven't been taught about the trapezium a lot. We haven't been taught about the parallelogram a lot.
You know what? That's actually a really good point. That's a really good point, and I'm going to sort of elaborate on that. It was kind of correct there because when we're younger, like when we're in reception in year one, year two, we're shown this shape and we're told this is a square, this is the properties of a square, and then we grow up thinking, well, this is a square and nothing else because we've been told it's a square. But as we get older, we need to appreciate that actually we might be able to classify this as something else. I'm going to ask one more person the same question and then we'll move on, guys. Scarlett, why do you think that we call this a square more so than anything else?
because well, they've given us the length of the shape and the width of the shape. Since they're the same, that means that they're a square.
Yeah, exactly. So let me elaborate on that. Yeah, it's special. It's very specific, right? Let me quickly explain something. We can draw a rectangle more than one way, can't we? Like some of you have said, we can make it look long rather than, well, square shape, so to speak. A parallelogram needs two pairs of parallel sides. We can draw that another way. We don't draw a parallelogram like this and nothing else. In fact, we've already seen a different type of parallelogram in this lesson. A rhombus just needs four sides of equal length. We can draw that another way. We can have slanted lines and slanted angles. But this shape here is specifically a square, okay? This is how we draw a square, and there is no other way. Yeah, we might have shorter lengths and widths, but it fulfills both of those criteria for square. So it's a very special rectangle, and of course a special parallelogram and a special rhombus. So you can call it a rectangle, you can call it a square, you can call it a parallelogram, you can call it a rhombus, but square is the best name, isn't it? Because it's the most specific name. All right, well done, guys. Not an easy lesson, is it? It's a lot of discussion and a lot of considerations, but you're doing amazingly. Let's take a look at another shape. What's going on here then? Okay. Oh, Theo, I think I missed you out, Theo. Let me go to Theo. Theo, is this shape a rectangle?
No, because it doesn't have four right angles.
Perfect, succinct, concise, perfect. It doesn't have four right angles. It cannot be a rectangle. Let's get rid of that one. We know it's not a rectangle. Cross. Okay, let's go to Himank. Himank, is this shape a square?
No, because it does not have four right angles. Either it does not have four sides of equal length.
Perfect. I love how to the point you guys are being. Annabelle, is this a parallelogram?
It's not a parallelogram because it says a quadrilateral with two pairs of sides, and it doesn't have any pairs of sides, parallel sides.
Perfect. No pairs of parallel sides. Jacob, is this shape a rhombus?
It's not a rhombus because if you see, it doesn't have four sides of equal length.
Perfect. It doesn't have four sides of equal length. We don't even need to get our ruler out, do we? We can see clearly the sides aren't equal in length. George, is this shape a trapezium?
The trapezium, I'm not sure. Actually, yeah, it is I think it is a trapezium.
All right.
Because there is one pair of parallel lines. That line where your pen is on right now.
Hold on, George.
Yeah,
Tell me, which sides are parallel?
A and C.
Are they parallel? Let's take a look. I'm going to draw my fancy lines here. Let's see if they're parallel.
Wait, does parallel mean that they will touch once?
It means they won't.
Oh, I thought parallel means they will.
Okay, we'll draw them anyway, just to make sure. So look, A and C, they're eventually going to merge and crash into each other. So we know that they're not parallel. So
Okay.
George, is it a trapezium?
No.
Perfect. So Ira, what does it mean about this shape?
What means?
What is this shape? What can we now decide about this shape?
I think this shape is an irregular quadrilateral because let me just it has one pair. It doesn't actually, because they're gonna crash in a minute if you keep drawing the lines. It's not trapezium, and the only option left is an irregular quadrilateral because it doesn't follow the rectangle's property. It doesn't follow the square properties. It doesn't follow the parallelogram properties. It doesn't follow the rhombus properties, and it doesn't follow the trapezium properties. So the only option is irregular quadrilateral.
Fantastic. It is an irregular quadrilateral. And I think just by looking at it, we can see it's a bit odd, can't we? It's a little bit irregular. All right, well done, guys. So what I would recommend is up to you, of course, but what I'd recommend in order to properly sort of solidify this knowledge, make sure that we really understand. Again, you don't have to do this, but a good suggestion would be if you get some time, it might be worth creating a quadrilaterals poster. And what I would do is I'd write at the top like quadrilaterals, and I would draw lots of different quadrilaterals, and I'd explain underneath them why are they the quadrilateral that I've listed it as. For example, we might draw a rhombus and say, why is this a rhombus? And also, it would be a good way to experiment other ways that we can draw shapes. For example, I mean, I won't talk about all of them, but rectangle. A lot of you have said today that a rectangle must look like this. Yeah? And we didn't really consider at first that it could look just like a square, because indeed a square is a rectangle. All right? So well done for today, guys. I'm going to stop recording